Hey, ladies.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, today I want to talk about perfectionism, whether it's good or bad. And this is timely because it's coming off of an interview that I did last week. And albeit I was interviewing a junior person, but when I asked them the typical question about, hey, what's an area that you're trying to improve or a skill that you're working on? The immediate shot back response was, I'm a perfectionist. And
Classic.
blah, blah, blah. There was a bunch of stuff following it. And I was shocked. Was like, what is this? And so I don't know when or how perfectionism kind of got turned into a positive or a negative, but that response just caught me off guard. I don't know if you guys have heard similar things.
I've used it.
You've used
Guilty as
it.
charged. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Wow.
feel like
Okay.
For
it's like a
sure.
classic top 10 interview tips, how to answer the
Mhm.
question about like
Use a
negative things about
positive.
yourself. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Turn it around.
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely done that. But I mean, it's true. Like I am a perfectionist, so I can totally relate to that. But
You're a self-proclaimed perfectionist, Lex.
yeah.
I am
Yeah,
as well.
100%.
I feel like
And
I am not at all. Like, perfectionist is not a word I would ever use for myself. I would refer to myself as like a B grade student. I would say I like to ship things at work. And now it's interesting because I still want to do things well, obviously. Like, I don't want to ever
Mhm.
put something out that is not done. But at the same
mhm.
time, I am not going to fuss over minute details. Like, I need to get it done. I need to get it shipped. And I would say part of like my brand, quote unquote, is like ability to move stuff. And so I
Right.
Right.
kind of equate perfectionism as something that would be a barrier to that. But interesting. Would love to hear kind of your perspective because you guys are both really successful in your careers and are self-proclaimed perfectionists.
Lex, you go first.
Okay, so yeah, I would say I've probably been a perfectionist for a long time. It probably started back when I was young with school, as I mentioned to you guys in other episodes. Like I was always trying to get straight A's. Like it's something that's kind of stuck with me for a long time, and I think a lot of it stems from fear of not doing well, like fear of
Mhm.
not doing things really well, like just being okay. And I think that's part of being a high achiever, someone that really just wants to like everything it's not that I need everything to be perfect. It's that I want things to be a certain level before, let's say, I share it with a client or before I send the pitch deck over. What about you, Neens?
Yeah, I'm definitely similar. Obviously, probably stems from childhood and like trying to get my parents' approval or
Yeah.
whoever's approval. But I can be psychotic on some things like loading the dishwasher. I'm like, no, has to be in its perfect little setting, which drives people crazy. And I feel
Mhm.
like it's just those like little nuances that like can show up super positively when it's coming to like giving super polished materials back or like in my conversations, but can be so debilitating at the same time
Mhm.
because it's can show up in really ridiculous ways, like a dishwasher.
Yeah, I would say it definitely shows up for me in other ways too outside of the workplace. Like as an example, if I'm gonna go on a trip, I like research the trip to death
Yeah.
until I'm 100% sure that it's the right trip. And then if it's not, I'm very disappointed. So like that could be something that definitely gets in my way at times where my husband's like, "Can you just make a decision? Just make a decision and let's move things forward." So I think there are times where perfectionism can be a good thing as long as you understand your limitations.
Mm.
And I think there are times when it could be something that, like, to your point, Laurel, it stalls people and maybe not, it doesn't allow them to move forward. So,
And I
yeah.
guess on that point, Laurel, you said that you're not a perfectionist, but you did talk about wanting to hold people up to standards or having high standards. So, from your perspective, like, what is the difference between perfectionism and high standards?
It's a good question. I feel like part of it is just when you're at work, you need to do things well. Like, I want to be the best at my job, right? But part of that is I need to move things forward and I need to get things
Mhm.
done. And it's interesting, Lex, you talked about like researching to the nth degree. And so, like, maybe decisions come like maybe not as decisive. I don't know if that's like what I'm reading through the lines, but for me, like, I'm very decisive. I would say no one would ever say that you can't make a decision. I make a decision, I make it pretty quick based on the facts that I have because we need to move forward.
Yeah.
And I think there's justification in that where you're like, "Hey, this is what I have. We have to move forward. This is how we're gonna do it." I guess, like, workplace wise, you still want to do things well. I don't care if the page number is like alt left or alt right. I don't care if
Oh,
the font is 18 on one and 17 on the next.
no. This
And
is hurting
I
me,
know, Nina,
Laurel. It's
it's the opposite
painful
of
to
you.
listen to. Oh my
But I think
god.
there's things that, like but I wonder too, like, you are on like, you're dealing with clients, and so you have to give
Yeah,
client-facing things a different
Yeah.
kind of perspective than when I'm moving things internally. Like, I don't need my direct reports to give me formal briefing docs. Like, I want to know what you're saying, why you're saying it, how we're
Mhm.
gonna do
mm,
it. I don't need it to be perfectly kind of rounded out. So, I think there's context to, yeah, like, where you lay the importance of being perfectionist or doing good work.
Yeah. I think also, like, Nina and I work in kind of that external communications side of the business. So, like, for example, when I worked in editorial, like, you cannot make a mistake.
yeah,
It will That will be the death of you because something gets printed and that's the final piece. Like, so I think there's something about being meticulous in the industry that we work in where you have to be you have to have things in a certain way. Obviously, like, I would say maybe things like, okay, the font I won't be as particular about, but like a spelling error in a presentation, I would die. I would die.
absolutely.
No,
Yeah, it
I don't want a spelling error, but I think there's a difference between spelling like, grammatically correct and fussing over a specific word so much that you can't
Yeah.
move forward, right? Or the shade of a color in a box that you can't move forward, right? So that's, like, content versus kind of presentation, and then I think they're, like,
Mhm.
2 different kinds of things.
Yeah, and for me, it definitely comes down to credibility. That's maybe where it comes from. Like, I feel judged by what I put out there. And I
Completely.
guess that can go for a positive or a negative thing, right? Like, there's a desire for me to want to do the best because I know I'm going to be judged and I want to show up in a certain way for people. The flip side to that is exactly what you talked about, Lex, right? Like, it inhibits your ability to move forward, it inhibits your ability to move things quickly, it inhibits your ability to maybe go after dreams or like projects or
Yeah.
whatever, new jobs that you've always wanted to do because you're just like very focused in a box. But there's a direct line for me between how I show up, my credibility, what that looks like, and the output that I deliver.
It's interesting
Yeah.
when you got so when I heard this person say perfectionist, it's like,
Yeah.
A weird answer. I'm like, "This is like, yeah, 2010 back again." But outside of that, it also is a little bit of a red flag where I'm like, "Are you going to be in detail paralysis? Like, I need you to
Mm.
move things forward." And so, what do you guys I guess if somebody were to have said that to you, do you find that to be a benefit or a negative?
You go ahead, Nina.
Yeah, I know it's a really interesting question because I feel like I would like see myself in that person, and then I would
Mhm.
automatically try to coach them away from it, and maybe not necessarily like recognizing those elements that got them there, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, Lex, go ahead.
I So for me, I don't see, and maybe I don't know if this is because I am a perfectionist, but I don't my first instinct wouldn't be like, "Oh, this person wouldn't be the right fit," because I
Mm,
don't see it as a negative thing. I think perfectionism can be a powerful, positive thing for change if you're looking at, let's say, structure, or you're reliable, or you're someone who, like, can see 360 degrees. Like, I think there's a lot of traits, that perfectionists have that can be good. I think where it can get a little bit, debilitating for some people is when they, like we were talking about, is they can't move things forward. So I wouldn't
yeah.
I for me, I don't think all perfectionists are bad. I just think it's like, where are the challenges in your perfectionism and what are the things that stall you? Actually, I do want to share with you guys. There's a psychotherapist. Her name's Catherine Morgan Schaeffler. She wrote a book about perfectionism, the Perfectionist Guide to Losing Control: A Path to Peace and Power. So she actually breaks down that there's 5 different perfectionists, and they kind of have different traits on what limits them, or what are some challenges with respect to their perfectionism, and what are the things that make them really good at their job. Okay, so I'm going to break these down for you guys. The intense perfectionist. This is someone who strives for
Luna.
success at all costs.
I saw Laurel staring at me, looking at me on the screen here.
So this is like your Gordon Ramsay, your Steve Jobs, like they're really good at generating outcomes, but potentially lose like that sense of relationship building along the way. So you can see like these guys are successful. They're good
Mm.
at their jobs, but there are some areas that obviously they need to work on with respect to relationship building. Number 2, classic perfectionist. This is the person that we typically think of when we think of a perfectionist, highly organized, buttoned up. So this is someone that is reliable, structured, but could be maybe less collaborative or
Mhm.
spontaneous. I feel like I might fall into that one a little bit.
I mean, talk about your planning of your trips to the T. No spontaneity.
Exactly. Okay, so Parisian perfectionists. These are the people pleasers. So they like to be viewed as easygoing, uncomplicated, and perfectly liked. So they're really good at making people feel seen or comfortable, but this is sometimes at the expense of their own identity.
Mm.
Interesting
That's
one.
yeah. I don't know if I know that many people like that, but maybe they're just masking, which is exactly what the definition is.
Yeah, exactly. Procrastinator perfectionist. This is, I think, a big one. So they're always waiting for the right time. I think this is when it can
Yeah.
get really challenging as a perfectionist because you're waiting for those perfect conditions, which is not real life. Like sometimes you just got to go.
Yeah.
So this type of perfectionist might spend hours like drafting up the most perfect proposal and then they just end up not sending it or sending it late. And this usually is because they have a fear of rejection.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. And the last one is the messy perfectionist. This is actually kind of funny. They're quick to start, slow to finish. So they're really in love with beginnings. So they love like getting a project started, but then when they get to that middle part, they really struggle with follow through because basically the project doesn't have that same excitement or momentum that it did in the beginning. So there's very much like that romanticism has been lost. And that's those are the 5. So this is really interesting because I think I love that she's kind of structured in a way where it's like, okay, there's different types of perfectionists. I think it shows up in different areas, different
Mm.
contexts. But also I think that there can be some benefits, some positive things, and obviously some negative things associated with it as well.
Yeah, and what's also interesting about it is that I feel like sometimes it makes it so black and white. Like even this conversation, Laurel, we're sort of debating between perfectionist versus non-perfectionism, but it can
Yeah.
show up in different ways. And how you probably take hold of that, how you channel it for good is maybe the distinction between it being debilitating or not.
Totally.
Yeah. So so that's a good point, like how us being perfectionists,
Yeah.
how would you say that like when to know that perfectionism is holding you back? Because I think it's important to move things forward. I love, Laurel, that you're good at making decisions. I think that is really key in terms of like moving projects forward. Like you got to be able to do that. But what are maybe some things for the listeners that we can highlight that would be helpful?
Yeah, I think if it's your inability to get shit done. So I say this all the time to juniors who end up sort of piling on some of those smaller tasks at the expense of focusing on bigger, probably
Yeah.
you know, bigger priority things. Like that's an element of being a perfectionist is you just want to focus in on the thing that you think you're going to get most recognized for and all of those little things pile up. And those are the little things that should get done first because they're easiest to do, but it's the things that are going to keep you up at night. It's the things that like your boss is going to notice you're not doing. It's those types of things I find that can really kind of trip people up and you don't even think it's a big deal until it really mounts. Like that's an example of something that I had to change in my life too. I think the more
Mm,
senior I got, the more you have more things to focus on was just like dealing with the little things first. That is in contrast to actually a podcast that I was listening to. Um he was talking about focusing on the biggest things first because that's where you feel like you get the most satisfaction and
mm.
reward. My only challenge to that is, yeah, you may get sort of the adrenaline rush. It makes you feel good to do those things, but it doesn't necessarily get rid of all those little things that can pile up. Or maybe you're
Yeah.
still going to be searching for perfection with those bigger things that you'll never actually get it done.
It's interesting. as you're talking, I'm thinking about like my work to-do list and how I
Yeah,
operate. And like when my perfectionism kicks in and it becomes a problem is when I'm avoiding the bigger
exactly.
projects where I'm like, I'm going to do all these like tactical small things because they're easy and they don't require a lot of energy. And I think that maybe perfectionism can be exhausting at times. So it's like
Mm,
I know when I'm gonna okay, classic procrastinator. Like I'm procrastinating this big project and I know when I'm gonna start it. It's gonna require a lot of energy for me because I'm gonna be stressing about the details and trying to make it perfect. So I think that it's interesting to see like your take on that because for
yeah,
me, I find starting with the big ones, it's challenging. Like
right.
I procrastinate because I'm like waiting for I'm like, no, I'm going to do it tomorrow because I have to get all these little things done when it's like, you know what? That's the thing you should tackle because it's the most difficult.
What about you, Laurel? Obviously, you've worked with people that are perfectionists or, have other people that are perfectionists in your life, personal or professional. How do
Like,
you talk to them?
yeah, I think, like, it is about, like, what you were saying, it's like I can't even say it, ruthless prioritization, like, you
Yeah.
have to, where it's like you still have to deliver things at a certain deadline, and
Yeah.
there's still a level of, like, attention to detail that's necessary in a job. It doesn't mean you need to be a perfectionist, like, I want my team to be delivering high quality projects and products and be
Mm,
collaborative with our other teams, etc. But I also need you to move stuff forward. So I think like helpful
Mm,
advice is just like, yeah, talking to your boss about what their expectation is in terms of formality, I think is important. Like what
yeah.
mhm,
requires finesse, what doesn't, like how do you best partner with them to keep moving things forward so you don't feel like you're in paralysis? Like again, like I said,
Yeah.
internally, I don't need a perfect email. Like I don't. I
yeah.
would rather I need to know what you're saying, why you're saying it, how you're saying it. But if it's external facing, 100%, that requires a different level. And so I think understanding where your projects lie, what the expectation is of your either your direct boss or your kind of colleagues, I think is important for you to kind of digest like where does that live and how does that impact kind of my performance?
Yeah. I want to go back to something that you said, Laurel, at the beginning of this conversation about um, understanding how people think may be actually more important than the end product that they produce. And so maybe that's also another tip or consideration is how do you bring people along for the ride, right? Like
Mhm.
may not know 100% of how to do something that your boss has asked you to do. So you can go to them and say, this is how I've been thinking about structuring it, right? Like, does this make sense? And sort of that iteration process gives them insight into how you think. And importantly, I think maybe how you deliver on things and what that will look like. And sometimes it is maybe just a little bit more important. Is that sort of
Yeah,
where that comes from, Laurel?
I love that because I feel like you also don't want your team to be spending a bunch of time on stuff that you're like, this is not the right direction. You actually interpreted
Yeah,
that in a way that was not. So, A, you're worried about it. You spun your wheels, you built this thing, and now your boss is like, hey, that actually wasn't what I was thinking. Versus
totally.
most good bosses are totally fine with you being like, "Hey, this is how I interpreted this. Does this make sense? Where do you want me to prioritize? How do you want me to focus? Or I'm not really sure where to get started. Can you help point me in the right direction?" Versus, I don't want you wasting a week going and
Yeah.
building something that was not
Right.
in line with, and maybe I didn't articulate it well from a communication perspective on what I expected. So I think that's a good example of like how you can practically kind of sort out how you can manage your time and manage how you deal with those types of projects.
And then I guess that diffuses this fear of being judged too, because you get so worked up about this sort of
Mhm.
final thing that you're going to be presenting, whether or not it's perfect. And this getting that feedback along the way can actually maybe give you that confidence or that adrenaline rush that you might be looking for.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
then
love that.
I think AI is definitely playing a huge part
100%.
in this because
Absolutely.
like, AI will help polish a bunch of stuff. However, it's quite obvious sometimes, like, how polished it is, and so
Yeah.
interested to kinda
Mm.
get your perspective since you are kinda client-facing, have been on the editorial side, like, how has AI and that kind of process impacted the way you work or think about perfectionism?
Yeah, this is such an exciting topic for me. I'm like a massive user of AI. I think it is both like democratizing access to information and like what people can do with their lives, but it's also incredibly destructive. And we can save that for another episode one day. But I really do think, it's such a disruptive force when it comes to the concept of perfectionism. It's sort of making me rethink about what the value of perfectionism is right now.
Hmm.
We used to spend so much time working on things. Now you have instant access to it. And I agree with you, Laurel, though. The problem is it's giving these perfect polished things, but everybody is starting to sound the same.
Hmm.
And that's, even I'm sure you were looking at all the resumes that you were getting or these like interviews that you're having, right? Like, how do you distinguish people is how they actually show up? It's that human way.
Mhm.
That's not what you're going to get from AI.
Yeah. This is an interesting conversation because I find AI can be helpful in maybe setting a structure. Let's say if you're like, okay, I'm trying to build out this deck and you need help strategically around how to position it. I think for me, sometimes it can become like analysis paralysis where
Mhm.
it'll just keep iterating over and over and over and over until you now it's like you've written this thing to death versus just being like, here's what I'm thinking, here's how I say it, like, and then you build out the deck. Like I just find AI in some ways can be helpful to maybe reduce that like anxiety around perfectionism because you have like this support that is
Yep.
almost helping you to overcome some of those challenges with making sure that things
It can put the
look
page
perfect.
numbers on the right part of the PowerPoint, and I don't have to care about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It can proofread for
Right.
spelling errors, like things like that is great. Um, I think using it to make certain processes more efficient is great. But I find as an editor, like again, having come from an editorial background, it 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 just it makes me more of a perfectionist because then I'm like, I spend so much time
Right.
revising what AI has done to try and make it sound like me. It's so yeah, I don't know. I think there are definitely benefits, but for me, it can sometimes make perfectionism worse.
So do you think you're going to be retreating to being more of a perfectionist given this technology tools?
I think I'm going to use the tools less. I think I'm going to use them
Interesting.
and be very specific about how I use them so that I'm giving myself the power that I need in the areas that I need. But like, I don't need AI to write for me. Like, that's my strength is my
It's
writing,
interesting
right?
because
So,
the AI tools we have now fills the gap that I have. Like,
Yeah.
like long form writing content is like not my
yeah,
strength. I had to write 2 papers in university and I cried the whole time I had to write 2 papers because I did like a a math economics degree, and I was like, "I don't write papers. I can do a test, no problem." So,
I
it's
I've written 500 papers
but
in
this
my
is why, like,
university time.
that's natural, and I think the thing
Yeah,
that AI helps with is, "This is what I wanna say this, can you write it in a way that can
yeah.
articulate
Yeah.
X, Y, or Z?" And it does it faster than I could ever do, and so there's
Mhm.
benefits in that sense, but it's true, when I read it, it doesn't sound like me. I'm like, "This sounds
Mm.
way more professional, way more AI." But again, if it's not editorial, it's not for a client, and it's for internal, like,
Yeah.
communications, then does it matter? And I think for me, that's where, like, that's the use case that it's beneficial for me, but I totally get that we don't wanna sound cookie cutter, and yes, Nina, all of the resumes I get are nearly virtual because they're
100%.
putting the job description in, saying,
Yeah.
"Spit out a good resume," and you get the same one. So you really do need to meet with people, like, in
Yeah.
person to get a good
It's the only
feel
way to
of, like,
know.
Yeah.
where they're at, for sure.
Yeah.
But I feel like a resume is an opportunity to stand out and write something unique. Like that's the way I see it. Like I
Right.
remember the last resume I wrote, I put like expert cocktail like whiskey sour maker, and someone actually was like, this is one of the best things I've seen on a resume because like it's just something it's not like it caught my eye. I was reading it and I was like, that's hilarious. So like I feel like it kind of removes the personality of the person a little bit, like what makes them different and unique.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think AI can be powerful in many ways, but we just have
Yeah.
to
Just
utilize
last
it
point.
for
Totally.
yeah, filling our gaps and helping with some things that we need support
Just
on and
last point on AI before we close it out. What I also think is so powerful about it is the ability for people on different sort of spectrums of being neurodivergent to use it to organize their lives, to do exactly what you're saying, Laurel. Like those people that have 50 things on the go that you talked about, Lex, that can't finish a project. Like
yeah.
I have had many conversations with people who have ADHD, for example, and they're like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me because it is helping me organize my life. It's helping me get shit
Mhm.
done. And so they may not have always fallen on that general perfectionism scale, but it's getting them to be more like well-rounded, getting them to like finish things, getting them to quote unquote be perfectionists at the end of the day.
That's
All
great.
right. So good conversation. Let's close it out with a few tips. Laurel, as a non-perfectionist, you can either gear this towards perfectionists out there or,
Y-
not.
Yeah, I think like it is kind of getting away from the word, right? I think you want to be proud of the work you do. I am very much be the best at your job you can be, which it will require a level of detail that's important. I would say the best advice is literally like go find out what the expectation is. So like go to your
Mhm.
boss, go to your colleagues, like in this situation, what is the expectation or the formality of this so that you don't get hung up on it. So if it is important and that's part of your job, great, do it. But if it's something that you think may be holding you back, you need to talk to your boss so that they're not thinking, why is this taking so long? Or like this wasn't what we thought. I think just nip it in the bud and try to get in front of like what the expectations are so that you can be pretty clear how to move forward. What about you,
Mm.
Rex?
Uh, I would say, as a self-proclaimed perfectionist, over the years, I think what's helped me, I think, as I mentioned, sometimes it can be a procrastinator. So I try and set a deadline for myself. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to start this presentation by Tuesday. That's the very latest that I can start it. And I find sometimes too, once I start it and I get momentum, I actually like get into it and I finish it. But it's sometimes just sitting down and actually starting it can be the hardest part. So I would say understand if you can, if you're a perfectionist, like what your limitations are, your challenges. And if you're the procrastinator, like set a timeline for yourself, set a goal, and just know that that process may not be the idealized version that you had, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then just to build off that, I would say um, think of it maybe more in terms of progress versus perfection. Like 90% done is better than
Yeah.
0% done at the end of the day. And I know that 10% is driven by fear, that 10% is driven by judgment, that 10% is driven by I'm not good enough. But you're never going to get to that 100%, I think, unless you actually focus more on progress.
Yeah.
That's something I've definitely been striving for in my life. I've noticed, it does feel good when you put yourself out there. And I also think you'll probably have a lot more champions than you will have detractors when you do that too.
100%.
Amazing. Well, thanks for bringing this up, Laurel. It's obviously a hot topic, something that, a lot of people struggle with, but something that's continuing to evolve too. And that's what makes it super interesting. So for everybody out there, please like this episode, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for being part of the After Call. If this felt familiar, you're not alone. Hit subscribe, leave us a comment, and share this episode with a friend. See you next time for more real talk about the beautiful, messy chaos of life.